You've got to understand something crucial. Consistency is not about motivation. It's not about waking up every day feeling pumped or inspired. That's a fantasy. That's what keeps most people stuck, believing that you have to feel ready, feel confident, or feel motivated before you act. You don't. In fact, waiting until you feel like it is the exact reason why you're inconsistent. You think the problem is that you're not motivated enough. No, the problem is that you've made consistency dependent on your emotions. Emotions are temporary, they're unreliable, they change with your mood, with the weather, with what someone said to you 5 minutes ago. If you only act when it feels easy, you will never build anything worthwhile. Let me tell you something real. You don't need to feel ready to show up. You don't need to feel good about it. You don't even need to believe in yourself. In the moment, you need to make a decision, that's it. That's the whole secret. Consistency is a decision to act. Whether you feel like it or not, it's about committing to something and doing it anyway, especially when it's hard, especially when it's uncomfortable, and especially when every part of you is screaming to quit. Because that's the moment where your future is made. Not in the easy moments, but in the moments when you push through the resistance. That's where real growth happens. People think successful people somehow different, like they were born with more drive or more discipline. No, the only difference is that they've trained themselves to act despite how they feel. They've taught themselves not to negotiate with excuses. You think consistency is about being superhuman. It's not. It's about being intentional. It's about deciding this matters to me and I'm going to follow through no matter what. Because if you're not consistent, you're telling yourself that this doesn't matter enough, and that's a hard truth, but it's a necessary one. Here's another truth. You've already proven you can be consistent. You've shown up for school, for work, for other people. Even when you didn't feel like it. The problem isn't your ability to be consistent, it's what you choose to be consistent with, and often you've been more consistent with your distractions than with your dreams. That stops now, that stops the second you decide to take your future seriously, because every time you choose to do what you said you would do, even when you don't feel like it, you build trust with yourself, and that's self-trust. That's the foundation of self-confidence. You want to change your life? Don't wait for a mood. Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait for clarity. Just start, act, decide, because here's the truth. The first few times you try to be consistent, it's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel uncomfortable. You might even fail, but that's not the point. The point is that you keep choosing to show up over and over and over again until showing up becomes your default, until it becomes who you are. Let's stop pretending consistency is some magical power. Other people have. It's a skill, it's a choice, and it's available to you. Right now, if you're willing to drop the excuses and take control of your actions, so the next time your alarm goes off and you don't feel like it, do it anyway. The next time you want to skip the gym, write the email later, break the promise you made to yourself. Stop, pause, and make the decision to follow through. Not because you feel like it, but because you said you would, because that's what consistent people do. And you can become that person. One decision at a time. Let's get one thing straight. The idea that you need to feel like it in order to take action is one of the biggest lies holding you back. It's a myth, a trap, and most people don't even realize they've fallen into it. You wake up in the morning and you check in with yourself. Do I feel like working out? Or do I feel like making that call? Or do I feel like doing the hard thing? And if the answer is no, you delay, you scroll, you talk yourself out of it. You say you'll do it later when you're in a better mood. But let me ask you this. How often does a later actually happen? How often do you magically feel more motivated? Later in the day, exactly. Almost never. That's because motivation isn't something you wait for. It's something you create, and you don't create it by sitting around thinking about what you should do. You create it by doing the thing. Action comes first. That's the truth. Nobody tells you when you move, your mind follows. But if you wait for your mind to lead the way, you'll stay stuck. You'll stay in your comfort zone, thinking over, analyzing, and convincing yourself that now is not the right time, that you need more energy, that you need more clarity, that you need to be more prepared. But really, what you need is to stop giving your emotions so much power. You are not your feelings. You are not your mood. You are not your doubts or your fears. You are the decisions you make in the moments when it's hard. You are the person who either acts in alignment with your goals or doesn't. And that's consistency demands action without permission from your feelings. You don't need to feel like it. You need to do it. Think about anything important in your life. Going to school, going to work, showing up for your family. Have you always felt like doing those things? Of course not. But you did them anyway. Why? Because you understood the consequences of not showing up, because there were external pressures, deadlines, responsibilities, expectations. But when it comes to your personal goals, there's no boss watching, teacher grading you. It's just you, and that's where most people slip up, because when the only person holding you accountable is yourself, and your standard is I'll do it when I feel like it, you'll always fall short. Here's what you need to do. You need to detach action from emotion. You need to stop asking yourself how you feel and start asking yourself what needs to be done. You need to become the kind of person who acts in service of their future, not in service of their mood, because your mood will lie to you. Your mood will tell you you're too tired, that it's not urgent, that it's okay to skip today, and every time you listen, you reinforce the habit of procrastination. Every time you delay, you make it easier to delay again. But the opposite is also true. Every time you act when you don't feel like it, you build strength. Every time you push through resistance, you prove to yourself that you're in control, that you are the one calling the shots. Not your excuses, laziness, not your doubts. And the more you act, the more momentum you build. That's how confidence grows, not from hyping yourself up, but from showing up again and again and again. And here's the kicker. Once you take that first step, the feelings usually follow you. Start to feel a little more focused, a little more engaged, a little more energized, a little more energized. That's because action changes your chemistry. It changes your brain. It pulls you out of that fog of inaction and into clarity. But you only get that gift if you push through the discomfort of starting. So stop waiting to feel like it, that version of you. The one who acts despite discomfort, despite doubt, despite low motivation. A version of you is already inside you, just have to stop silencing it with excuses. The future you want is on the other side of actions. You don't feel like taking, and the sooner you realize that, the sooner you'll stop being controlled by moods and start being guided by purpose. The moment you have an idea, something you know you should do, something that matters, something that could move your life forward, you have a window, a 5-second window, that's it. 5 seconds before your brain starts talking you out of it. Before fear kicks in, before self-doubt shows up, before your excuses get louder. That's how fast your mind works against you. When it senses discomfort, because your brain's job isn't to make you successful. 3, it's to keep you safe from failure, safe from embarrassment, safe from anything unfamiliar. And the fastest way it does that is by convincing you not to act. That's why the 5-second rule exists. It's not just a trick, it's a tool to interrupt your autopilot response and give you just enough control to take action. You count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you move, you speak up, you send the email, you go to the gym, you put your phone down. It seems so simple, almost too simple to be effective, but that's the genius of it, because it bypasses all the noise in your head. It cuts through the hesitation. It gives you a moment of power before your brain sabotages your intention. When you use the 5-second rule, you're doing more than just getting out of bed on time or finally starting that task. You've been putting off, you're teaching yourself that you are in control. You're building the habit of taking immediate action. And that habit, when practiced consistently, what creates consistency across the board. This is how you force yourself to be consistent even when your feelings are pulling you in the opposite direction. You act fast. You don't negotiate. You don't wait until the moment feels right, because it rarely ever will. Here's what people don't realize. Your mind has 2 settings, auto and manual, easy. Most people live on autopilot. They do what's easy, what's familiar, what feels good in the moment. But when you want to change, when you want to grow, when you want to build something that lasts, you have to shift to manual. You have to override the system. That's what counting down does. It engages your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, focus, and goal setting. And that small shift is all you need to change everything. Think about all the times you've hesitated, where a split-second pause cost you an opportunity. Fitzy, you didn't speak up in the meeting. You didn't reach out to that person. You didn't follow through on that plan. Not because you couldn't, but because you gave your brain time to kill the idea. Every second you wait, your mind fills in the blanks with fear, uncertainty, and self-doubt. The 5-second rule is your weapon against that. It's the tool that closes the gap between intention and action, and that's the gap where most people lose the battle. When you start using it, you'll feel the resistance. Your brain will push back. That's normal. That's a sign that you're doing something different, something meaningful. The discomfort you feel is the same discomfort that comes with lifting a heavy weight at the gym. It's the tension that builds strength, and the more you push through it, the more consistent you become. Because consistency isn't about doing big dramatic things. It's about doing small things daily, automatically, without overthinking. This tool puts the power back in your hands. No more waiting for the perfect time. No more hoping motivation shows up. You create momentum by acting fast, deliberately, and repeatedly. And the more you do it, the more your brain starts to expect it. You start to build a new identity. You become someone who follows through, someone who doesn't flinch when it's time to act, someone who doesn't let fear dictate their behavior. That's the real magic of the 5-second rule. It's not about activity hacks or willpower. It's about retraining your brain to act like the person you want to become. The person who gets up when it's easier to stay in bed for when it's easier to stay in, the person who makes the call instead of procrastinating, the person who takes control instead of waiting to be rescued by some wave of inspiration. It's simple, it's science-backed, and it works. If you use it so the next time you feel hesitation creep in, don't think just count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Move your future depend on it. Discipline is not something you're born with. It's not some rare genetic trait that only a few lucky people have. Discipline is a skill. Just like learning to ride a bike or play the piano, it's something you build with repetition, effort. People look at successful, consistent individuals and assume they have superhuman willpower. That's not true. What they have is a system, a commitment to doing the hard thing over and over until it becomes second nature. That's what discipline really is. It's the decision to act in alignment with your goals. Even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it, we tend to romanticize motivation, but motivation is inconsistent. It comes and goes. If you build your habits on motivation, progress will be random and unreliable, but when you build discipline, you create a foundation, a structure, something you can rely on even when everything else is a mess. Because let's face it, life will get messy, you'll get tired, you'll get frustrated, you'll have bad days, that's inevitable. But if you've developed discipline, you'll still show up, you'll still move forward, not perfectly, not always with enthusiasm, but with commitment. And the best part, discipline compounds every time you do the thing you said you do. You're not just making progress, you're making yourself stronger. You're teaching your brain, hey, I can trust myself. That self-trust is powerful. It changes how you carry yourself. It changes how you speak to yourself. You go from hoping you'll stay consistent to knowing you will. That's when things start to shift. Building discipline doesn't require huge leaps. It starts small, really small. Maybe it's waking up at the same time every day. Maybe it's sticking to a 10-minute workout. Maybe it's committing to 15 minutes of focused work before checking your phone. Those moments might feel insignificant, but they're not. They're everything, because every time you follow through, you reinforce the identity of someone who is disciplined, someone who does the work, someone who doesn't make excuses. Here's what you need to know. Your brain is always watching. It pays attention to what you do, and the more you give into excuses, the more it learns that those excuses run the show. But every time you act with discipline, even in a small way, your brain learns, oh, we're doing this now, this is who we are. That shift in identity is what turns short-term mechs into long-term habits. Of course, it's going to be uncomfortable. That's the point. Discipline is born in discomfort. It's easy to stick to your plan when you feel great. But that's not when you grow. You grow when you get up and do it anyway, when you choose the long-term reward over the short-term relief. That choice, that tension is where discipline lives, and the more often you make that choice, the more automatic it becomes. Most people are waiting for their lives to get easier, for the resistance to disappear, for the path to smooth itself out. But here's the truth, it doesn't get easier. You get stronger. You become someone who can handle the hard days, someone who doesn't quit when things get tough, someone who keeps moving forward even when progress is slow and invisible. That's what discipline gives you, the ability to keep going when others stop. And let's talk about pride. The pride you feel when you do the hard thing is unmatched. It's not loud or flashy, it's quiet, it's internal, but it changes you. It builds confidence, not the kind of confidence that comes from compliments or achievements, but the deep kind, the kind that comes from knowing you showed up when it counted. So stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting to feel disciplined. You build discipline by acting before you're ready, by proving to yourself moment by moment that you are capable of doing hard things. That's how you change. That's how you grow. That's how you become consistent, not by wishing for more motivation, but by building the skill of discipline one choice at a time. Your brain is not designed to make you successful. It's designed to keep you safe, and that single truth explains why being consistent feels so hard every time you try to make a change, every time you attempt to create a new habit, every time you say, this time I'm serious. Your brain starts working against you, because it hates you, but because it's doing its job. Its job is survival, and change, even positive change, feels like a threat. That's why you feel resistance. That's why your mind gives you all those excuses, distractions, and rationalizations. It's your brain's way of keeping you in the known. In the familiar, in the predictable, your brain is a prediction machine. It loves patterns. It loves routine. And even if your current routine is making you miserable or keeping you stuck, at least it's familiar. That familiarity equals safety to your brain. So when you try to break that pattern, when you try to be more consistent with your workouts, your writing, your business, or anything else, your brain throws up resistance like a wall. That voice in your head starts whispering, you're too tired, you can do it later. It's okay to skip just this once. And if you're not aware of what's happening, you'll believe it. You'll think those thoughts are true, but they're not. They're just your brain trying to protect you from change. Understanding this is a game changer. It gives you power because once you realize that the resistance you feel isn't a sign to stop, it's a signal to keep going. You stop being controlled by it. You stop giving in so easily. You learn to expect the resistance. You learn to see it for what it is, a natural part of the process. It's not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something right. You're stepping into unfamiliar territory. You're expanding, and your brain is simply trying to pull you back into what it knows. The key is learning how to override that system, how to act anyway, because the only way to rewire your brain is through action. You can't think your way into a new habit. You can't visualize your way into consistency. You have to do it until the new behavior becomes the new familiar, until the resistance quiets down, and that takes time, that takes effort. But most of all, it takes awareness. You've got to catch yourself in the moment. When you start negotiating with yourself, when you start making excuses, you have to pause and say, this is the resistance I knew it would come in. I'm not going to let it win. And here's the thing, it gets easier, but only after it gets harder. In the beginning, pushing through that resistance feels like climbing a mountain, but every time you do it, you carve a new path in your brain. That's neuroplasticity. That's science. Your brain is capable of change, but only through consistent effort every time you act, despite resistance. You weaken the old pattern and strengthen the new one. Eventually, the thing that once felt hard starts to feel automatic. Not because the task changed, because you did. This is why forcing yourself to be consistent is not just about willpower. It's about understanding your biology. Your brain doesn't care about your goals. It cares about comfort. It wants you to stay in bed, stay quiet, stay small. Wow. That's why it resists your morning alarm, your workout, your hustle, your dreams, but you're not here to stay safe. You're here to grow, and growth requires discomfort. It requires walking straight into that resistance and doing the thing anyway. You will never completely eliminate resistance, but you can learn to move through it. You can train yourself to act even when it shows up. That's how high performers operate. Not because they don't feel the resistance, but because they don't listen to it. They recognize it, they expect it, and then they override it. They make action. The default, and you can do the same, but you have to stop believing the lie that resistance means stop. Resistance means go. It means keep pushing. It means you're right on the edge of growth. So don't pull back. Don't hesitate, override it and act. Let's talk about momentum, because if there's one thing that separates people who stay consistent from those who constantly start and stop, it's their relationship with momentum. Momentum is that forward motion, that energy you generate by taking action. It's what carries you through the hard days, the low energy moments, the times when motivation has completely dried up. And here's what most people don't understand: momentum doesn't show up by chance. It's created, it's built one small action at a time. Too many people wait for a perfect moment to begin. They wait until they feel ready, until the stars align, until the calendar looks clean. But that's not how momentum works. It doesn't come from thinking. It doesn't come from planning. It doesn't even come from motivation. It comes from doing it comes from doing the tiniest action. Writing one sentence, doing 5 push-ups, making that first call can ignite it. And once it's there, it becomes your ally, your fuel. It makes the next step easier, and then the next. Suddenly the task that felt overwhelming starts to feel manageable. You start to feel capable, and that belief grows stronger with every single step forward. But here's the truth: most people don't want to hear if you stop. Lose it. Momentum is like pushing a boulder up a hill. It's heavy at first, but once it starts rolling, it moves with force. Stop pushing and it slows. Let it sit too long and you're back at the bottom again, trying to rebuild that energy from scratch. That's why consistency matters, not perfection. Intensity, consistency, because every time you show up, even in a small way, you're protecting your momentum. You're keeping the ball rolling, and that steady rhythm is what leads to breakthroughs. So often people ask, how do I stay motivated? That's the wrong question. What you should be asking is, how do I keep my momentum alive? Because when you protect your momentum, you don't need motivation. The energy comes from the action itself. You do the work, you feel the progress, and that progress creates a feedback loop that drives you forward. But if you only act when you feel inspired, your progress will always be start filled with guilt, frustration, and lost time. Momentum is also what helps you shift your identity, because let's be honest, the way you see yourself drives the way you show up. If you see yourself as someone who always quits, you'll keep quitting. If you see yourself as inconsistent, you'll act inconsistently. But when you start stacking wins, even small ones, you begin to change the story you start to believe. someone who shows up. I'm someone who follows through, and that belief gives you power. It reinforces the momentum and helps you keep going. Even when the conditions aren't perfect, you don't need to be extreme. You need to be committed. Show up when it's boring. Show up when it's hard. Show up when you'd rather do anything else. Because every time you do, you're not just moving forward, you're sending a message to your brain. We don't negotiate with excuses, we act, and that message becomes part of your identity. That's how consistency is built. Not from epic once-in-a-while effort, but from daily, deliberate action, even if it's not perfect, even if it's messy, even if it's just 5 minutes. And if you fall off, because you will, we all do, don't let that pause become a pattern. Get back to action fast. Don't overthink. Don't wallow. Don't wait for the right mood. Just take one step, write one sentence, go for one walk, do one thing, because that one thing reactivates your momentum. It reminds you of your power, and the quicker you return to movement, the less damage the pause can do. Momentum is your responsibility. No one else can create it for you. No one else can keep it alive. It's yours to build, protect, and use. So stop waiting to feel like it. Stop waiting for the ideal time. Start where you are with what you have and take one small step forward, then do it again tomorrow. That's how momentum is built. That's how consistent becomes who you are. There is a version of you that you haven't met yet. A stronger, more disciplined, more consistent version, a version that follows through, that doesn't talk themselves out of what they said they were going to do. That version is not some fantasy. That version is real. It's already inside of you, but the only way to meet that version is through action, through repetition, through doing the work, even when you don't feel like it, because your future self, the one who is confident, fit, focused, successful, doesn't arrive by magic. You build that version through what you do today. The problem is that most people want the result without the process. They want the transformation without the repetition. They want the confidence, the habits, success. But they're not willing to earn it through consistency. And that's where everything falls apart, because who you become is a direct reflection of what you do. Over and over again, your identity is shaped by your actions, not your wishes. You can't just think about being consistent. You have to live it, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Every single day, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you want to be. When you show up, even when it's inconvenient, you're voting for the disciplined version of yourself. When you keep a promise to yourself, even if it's small, you're reinforcing the identity of someone who follows through. But when you skip the workout break, the habit, ignore the plan, you're not just delaying progress, you're also strengthening the belief that you're someone who quits. And that belief becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. The good news: you can break that cycle one decision at a time. You can start acting like your future self now. You don't need to wait until everything's perfect. In fact, it never will be. The future version of you isn't created. Someday it's created in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of the stress, in the middle of all the reasons why you could quit, but you don't. That's when the shift happens, when you decide that the old version of you, the one who starts strong but fades fast, is not who you are anymore. And that transformation isn't loud. It's not some massive dramatic moment. It's subtle, creative. It happens quietly in the choices no one sees. It's choosing to keep writing when you're tired. It's choosing to speak kindly to yourself when your mind is full of doubt. It's choosing to show up again and again, even when progress is slow. That's how you change, not by waiting for the big breakthrough, but by mastering the small behaviors that your future self depends on. You have to ask yourself, what does the future version of me do every day? What decisions do they make? How do they handle setbacks? Because the truth is that version of you doesn't avoid hard things. They've just practiced doing them so many times, it's become normal. They've trained their mind to follow through regardless of how they feel. That's what makes them consistent. And you can practice the same thing starting now. You don't need to do everything perfectly. You just need to start behaving like the person you want to become. Even in small ways. Future you doesn't scroll endlessly on social media. Future you gets up when the alarm rings. Future you keeps their word. Even when no one's watching, every time you act in alignment with that version of yourself, you bring them closer to reality. You're not pretending you're practicing. You're rehearsing the traits that you want to hardwire into your identity. This is the mindset shift that changes everything. Stop asking, what do I feel like doing today? And start asking, well, what would the future me do? That question creates clarity. It cuts through the noise, because the future you is consistent. The future you doesn't negotiate with procrastination. And when you act from that place, when you force yourself to live like that person, even in small moments, you begin to transform. And here's the powerful part. The more you act like your future self, the more your brain starts to believe that's who you really are. That belief drives new actions, and those actions lead to new results, and that's how you become consistent. Not by waiting, not by wishing, but by stepping into the identity of your future self. Right now, in this moment, with the choices you make today.